When I returned from my internship abroad, the garage was empty. A for rent sign hung in the window, and my key no longer worked. My clothes sat in trash bags on the curb. Dad texted, "You're an adult, figure it out." I replied, "Check your mailbox next week." 19 months later, they'd called 187 times. There's a moment when your entire world shatters, not with a bang, but with the sickening gut punch of realizing the people who raised you just threw you out like yesterday's trash. That day, I wasn't just losing a house. I was losing the last shred of an illusion I'd clung to my entire life. See, I'm Max, the quiet older brother, the reliable one. And in my family, reliable meant invisible until a bill showed up. I was the kid who fixed the router, drove grandma around, and slid cash across the table when the electricity got too high. My younger sister, Harper, she was the golden one. She had potential. I just had steady hands. Same house, totally different rules. Just got back from 7 months abroad, a logistics internship in Rotterdam that taught me to read a port schedule like sheet music. Nothing fancy, just hard work. I flew home on a Tuesday, cheap flights, you know. Texted mom during my layover, asked if she could pick me up. She read it. No reply. Classic. As the taxi rolled through familiar streets, past the diner with the flickering E and the thrift store mannequins, I wasn't dreaming of grand celebrations. Just my bed, my stupid, flattening pillow, my bike in the garage, hanging on hooks Dad swore weren't too fancy. Leftovers I could reheat at midnight. Simple stuff. Then, the driver turned onto our street. My eyes automatically darted to the driveway. The garage door was open, but it wasn't. We cleaned it empty. It was hollow, echoing. The wall where my bike had hung. Just dusty outlines and 2 lonely screws. My old toolbox, that ugly orange chest I'd painstakingly bought off Craigslist, gone. The whole place looked staged for a real estate brochure. I got out, my carry-on and tiny, world-traveled suitcase clutched tight. Walked up the path in that weird quiet you only get on a too hot evening. And there it was. A plastic sign I'd never seen, glaring red, for rent. The curtains behind it were different, too. Cheaper. Wrong color. My key didn't fit. It just didn't. I tried it twice, hard, until my knuckles went white. For a split second, I actually laughed, because my brain needed a joke. Then I stopped. Because on the curb, by the neighbor's recycling bin, were 4 black trash bags. One had split open, and a blue shirt I knew too well, my shirt, was peeking out, like it was embarrassed to be caught outside. I touched the doorknob, stupidly, as if it could explain. Then I stepped back, scrolling my phone with the slow, stubborn disbelief of someone refusing to understand a simple, brutal fact. 2 unread texts blinked up at me, both from Dad, sent while I was in the air. "You're an adult. Figure it out." We needed the space. Don't be dramatic. The air felt thick. I looked at the for rent sign again. At the bags on the curb, with thrift store stickers on 3 of my books. At the empty garage that had been my small pride. Somewhere, a dog barked on schedule. A neighbor's sprinkler ticked on, slicing the heat into regular sound. For a second, I was 6 again, holding my report card in the kitchen while Mom said, "That's what you're supposed to do." And the conversation just moved on. For a second, I was 19, transferring $150 to Harper at midnight because her textbook app was glitching. I stood there on the sidewalk, my suitcase beside me, a cheap airport sandwich in my backpack, and something old, something heavy inside me, turned over. Like a log in a fire, finding a new surface to burn. Across the street, Mr. Patel paused with his dog. "You back, Max?" he called friendly. I opened my mouth to say yes, and what came out was, "I guess." I didn't knock. I didn't call. I slid my phone into my pocket, knelt by the trash bags, and started picking out what was mine. One ordinary, humiliating item at a time. A t-shirt with my high school logo. My beat-up running shoes, flap on the heel. A chipped mug that said, "World's okay, son." I put them into my suitcase, zipped it closed, the zipper catching on a thread, as if even it had questions. Then I sat on the curb in front of a house that apparently wasn't my home anymore, and stared at the porch light I'd rewired last summer while Dad watched baseball inside and yelled, "Don't blow the breaker, genius." Somewhere between the last time the mower lines were straight and this moment right now, a decision had been made. Not by me, not with me, just about me. I watched the sun slide behind the neighboring roof, waiting for anger big enough to carry me. What arrived instead was quiet, clicking into place like a lock. When I was 10, Dad called me banker, like it was a joke. "Banker, hand me the tape," he'd say while I fixed a cardboard box because he refused to buy storage bins. At 12, I learned the actual jokes were about me. "Max loves chores," Harper would say, and they'd laugh because I didn't argue. This wasn't a cartoon villain household. It was the kind where everything had an explanation, if you wanted one. Dad's back hurt. Mom's nerves were shot. Harper had a lot of pressure, which covered everything from dropping a class to needing a new outfit. Money talk always found me. When I started busting tables at 15, Mom borrowed $60 from my tip jar for the water bill and texted, "We'll settle up." We never did. The first time Harper needed books, "Today, or else I'll be behind all semester." I sent $175 at 11:47 p.m. The last time it was $380, just until Friday. Friday became next Friday. Then my card payment date randomized. Then silence. When I asked, she sent a single skull emoji. And you're seriously keeping score? Wow. I kept score anyway. Quietly. $20 here, $90 there. Gas money. Tires. The emergency dentist that was actually veneers for Harper's crowded smile. Dad's tools stolen from the site that later appeared in our garage with the price tag still on. All of it worked because I made it work. I picked up shifts. Rode my bike. Learned to like oatmeal because it was cheap. I learned to say, no problem. In the bright tone of someone everyone believes will say yes again. I was the helper. The spare key. The can you stop by? The rule was simple. If Harper wanted it, it was a priority. If I wanted it, I had to justify it like a grant application. Senior year, I got into a state college with a partial scholarship. We had a family meeting. Dad spread bills like a dealer and said, look at reality. Mom sighed about timing. I offered to commute and keep working nights. Harper, a junior, asked if I could wait a year because her dance team needed a fundraiser chair, and I always make spreadsheets that don't suck. I deferred. Everyone praised me for being mature. No one mentioned maturity had a cost. I finished community college while working at the freight yard, then transferred late with a financial aid package that had more gaps than forms. I filled the gaps, of course I did. Shifts. Loans in my name because Dad's credit was complicated and Mom's was tied up. I graduated without ceremony because Harper's boyfriend's parents were throwing an engagement party that weekend, and it's a whole thing with the invitations. And then Rotterdam happened. A professor handed me a flyer. Internship at a shipping company. Not glamorous. Spreadsheets, arrival windows, emails to 6 time zones. But it included a plane ticket and housing. If I could front the deposit in first month, reimburse later. Fronting? That was my skill set. I sold my old guitar. Took the ugly tool chest off Craigslist for extra cash. Left my bike in the garage on hooks I paid for. I told Mom the dates. She said, lucky Harper never got an opportunity like that. Harper rolled her eyes and said, Max is a logistics guy. Of course, he'll do Europe. I wired the deposit and went. While I was gone, I got a series of texts that just fell off. Dad, do you still need all that space in the garage? Me, I have one shelf and my bike. Dad, your stuff is messy. Me, I labeled everything. Mom, we're thinking about renting the extra room, meaning mine, for a bit. Me, I'll be back in July. Mom, we'll talk. We didn't talk. I mailed home 2 postcards. Harper posted 3 beach pictures with captions like, we thrive, and never asked about my time zone. When I called on Sundays, Dad put me on speaker while he rattled dishes, so the echo swallowed my words. You sound different, Mom said once. Like you think you're better. I bit my tongue so hard it tasted like pennies. The rent thing escalated in a way that only makes sense if you've lived inside the long game of a family that decides you're a resource. A week before my return flight, Harper texted, need to borrow your car when you land. Just for a week. I asked why. She said, sorority retreat. Sponsors expect presents. I said the car's registration was due, and I didn't have extra for tickets. She sent, LOL, you're dramatic. Then a photo of nails I'm guessing were $70. I didn't reply. 3 days later, Dad sent a photo of an empty garage, labeled progress. 3 clapping emojis. I stared at it on my phone, watching a cargo ship crawl along the horizon like it had all the time in the world. I had all the facts. I just hadn't connected them, because connecting them meant admitting something ugly. They had made a decision that saved them money, cost me a home, and they'd done it without telling me because they counted on the part of me that would just figure it out quietly. The taxi meter ticked. The curb got darker. I set my suitcase beside me and gave myself permission to be practical because rage wouldn't get me a bed. I called 3 people. My friend Jordan, who picked up on the first ring and said, you can crash on my couch. My supervisor from the internship, who said, if you need a bridge week, we have a spare cot near the office. Not glamorous, but it's safe. And Mr. Patel, who quietly handed me a key to his back apartment above the deli. It's empty for 5 days. No charge. Don't argue. I texted Dad once. When did you change the locks? He replied, we gave you notice. I scrolled back. One text from 2 weeks ago. We're simplifying. Simple. I stared at the screen. At midnight, sitting on the little steps behind the deli with my suitcase, I opened the Notes app. I always make lists when the ground tilts. Title, what I can control. 1, a bed for the next week. 2, a P.O. box. 3, remove myself from accounts I pay. 4, pick up my SS card from the drawer, if it's still there. 5, stop being a wallet with feelings. In the morning, I'd go back for the rest of my clothes before the trash truck came. I'd walk up at 6 a.m. with a duffel and no apologies. I'd get my documents, not because I wanted to see anyone, but because you learn the hard way to secure the little things. I fell asleep to the hum of the deli fridge, dreamed about ship horns and spreadsheets that balanced themselves. When I woke, my phone had 3 missed calls from Mom and a text from Harper. Can you Venmo me $230 by noon? My tuition portal is glitching. No question mark, no greeting. I stared at that number and thought about the empty hooks in the garage. And the part of me that always flinched first didn't move. The big scene wasn't a wedding or a gala. It was a kitchen. It was Saturday. I'd gone at sunrise, grabbed what I could from the bags, then stood at the door until Dad opened it, because he thought I was the new tenant. He blinked. "Oh, morning." "Morning," I said, calm. I shifted my duffel higher on my shoulder. "I need my documents. Social, passport, the little fireproof folder in the bottom drawer. Then I'll be out of your way." Dad stepped aside like he was granting a favor. "You can't stay here," he said preemptively. "We have a lease for the room." "I know," I said. "I saw the sign." Mom appeared, hair in a towel, eyes already narrowed like she could smell a disagreement. "We texted you," she said. "You texted, we're simplifying," I replied. Because facts were safer than feelings, and I'd learned to speak in receipts. The locks were changed. My things were on the curb. "That's not simplification. That's eviction. That's dramatic." Mom snapped. "Stop calling me dramatic," I said, my voice still even. "It's lazy, and it's wrong." We stood in that tiny triangle of kitchen floor where I'd spent a decade scraping plates into the trash, while everyone else talked in the living room. Harper wandered in, wearing one of my old sweatshirts like a punchline. "Max," she said, sweet. "Are you seriously mad? You were gone for months." "I told you my dates," I said. She pushed hair behind her ear. "You always make everything a thing." Dad gestured toward the hallway. "Get your papers," he said, tired. "We have a showing at noon." That word, showing, crackled in the air like a bad wire. I went to my old room. The posters I'd left taped up were gone. The tape shadows remained like outlines of a body at a crime scene. The bed was stripped. In the corner, a new, cheap dresser sat with 2 drawers slightly off their tracks. On the closet rod, 3 plastic hangers waited like a dare. I knelt by the bottom drawer, pulled it out, reached for the fireproof folder, and found an empty space. I checked the second spot I'd used, the back of the 3rd shelf, because Dad never looks past the front row. Empty. My stomach did that slow elevator drop. I stood and found Mom at the doorway, arms crossed. "What are you looking for?" she asked, voice bored. "Documents," I said. "The folder. My passport, birth certificate. You know, the legal proof that I exist." "Oh," she said. "Your dad cleaned. He probably put it in the garage." "The garage is empty." Her mouth did a sympathetic twist that always meant I'm not sorry. "Check the hall closet," she said. I did. A stack of boxes labeled Kid, Bath, and H for Harper. None labeled Max. On the top shelf, my toolbox sat open, half the sockets missing. I took a breath that felt like it had edges. "Found my toolbox," I said. Which is wild, because it was in the way last month. Dad shrugged. "We used a few things." I held up the empty socket strip like a visual aid. "A few." "Stop," Mom hissed, glancing at the clock. "Tenants don't like drama." Something in me clicked. Not a spark, more like a seatbelt locking. "No," I said, calm enough that all 3 of them looked at me. "You don't get to toss me, keep my tools, list my room on a website, and then call me dramatic because I asked for my passport. We're going to fix 3 things right now. 1, I'm leaving with my documents. 2, you're done asking me for money. 3, my name comes off every bill I've ever been roped into. Phone plan, car insurance, utilities with my social as the guarantor, all of it. Today." Dad snorted. "You can't just, I can't." I said, "I already did. The P.O. box. The rest is paperwork." Harper rolled her eyes. "You really think you're above family now?" "This isn't about revenge," I said, voice steady enough to surprise even myself. "This is about closure. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your collateral. I'm your son, and you don't treat sons like storage." Silence. Real silence. Not the kind where someone is prepping a speech. The refrigerator hummed like it wanted to be a white noise machine. Mom broke first. "You owe us," she said quietly, like a last card down on the table. "We raised you." I nodded once. "And I worked. And I paid. And I did my share, and then some. I'm done being punished because I'm dependable." Dad's jaw tensed. "If you walk out like this, don't come back asking for help." "I never asked," I said. "But you keep asking me." I found the folder in the laundry room, of all places. On top of a dryer sheet box. Like a joke only a clerk at the DMV would enjoy. I slid the passport and certificates into my duffel. On the way out, I unplugged the little Wi-Fi mesh node I had bought and installed, and set it on the counter. "This is mine," I said. "The main router, too." "That's petty," Harper said. "No," I said, finally letting a small smile out. "That's accurate bookkeeping." Dad took a step toward me. "Don't you dare take the, call the police," I said. "And tell them you changed the locks on your kid, and put his clothes on the curb. See how that story sounds when it's not in your kitchen." We stared at each other for a long beat. He stopped moving. He wasn't used to me not blinking first. "I'll be mailing you something next week," I said, slinging the strap across my chest. "Read it, and then don't text me again unless it's about a death or a medical crisis." "I mean it, Max," Mom said, voice going syrupy. "Don't do this." "I already did," I said and walked out. Down the same path I'd mowed every July since I was 15, past the empty garage, past the cheap sign in the window, into the heat that felt like a clean slap. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed with a new message from Dad. "You're an adult. Figure it out." I looked at it, typed my reply, and sent it without shaking. "Check your mailbox next week." Then I blocked them. The envelope I sent wasn't a grenade. It was a boundary. 12 pages, simple words, printed at the library because Jordan's printer was out of ink. The cover letter said, "This is not revenge. This is notice." Inside, I listed every account bearing my name that touched theirs. Cell plan, termination date, confirmation number. Car insurance, removed 2 drivers from my policy, confirmation number. Electric bill at the house, my social removed as guarantor starting 1st of the month, confirmation number. Streaming platforms, shared logins, random monthly charges that quietly appeared and never got discussed. Done. I included a ledger because I'm me. Not to demand repayment, but to show the math of my life. 5 years of loans, with dates and amounts. $9,842 total. At the bottom, I wrote, "I'm not collecting. I'm closing the account." I also enclosed a spare house key, a photocopy of the Wi-Fi receipt, and a notarized letter stating I would no longer authorize the use of my name, credit, or income on any application. Any attempt would be considered identity misuse. I paid for certified mail. I kept the little green slips like trophies. Jordan and his boyfriend Luis gave me their couch for 3 nights, and their spare room for 2 weeks after their roommate moved out unexpectedly. "You can stay as long as you need," Jordan said, waving a spatula at me while trying not to burn quesadillas. Also, dude, that was the calmest nuclear boundary I've ever seen. I laughed for real that night, for the first time in days. Day by day, I handled the boring miracles. A P.O. box key on my keychain. A new bank account. No joint users, no shortcuts. I checked my credit, found 2 inquiries from a car lot I'd never visited. I disputed them with the quiet, stubborn energy that had kept me alive in that house. I took an entry-level operations job at a local shipping firm, same industry as Rotterdam, but with better coffee and a boss who remembered birthdays with cupcakes and names spelled correctly. At 6:05 p.m. on the 3rd Thursday, I got the delivery confirmation, signed by M. The next morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. By noon, 39. The voicemails were a whole season of television. Mom crying, Dad furious, Harper incredulous. An aunt I hadn't heard from in 2 years telling me, family isn't a contract. A cousin whispering, I'm proud of you, man. Like it was contraband. I didn't respond. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and folded laundry on the floor of a room that was mine because my name was on the lease and because my rent cleared from my account alone. The quiet felt heavy at first, then clean. Life shrank into routines that belonged to me. I bought a cheap bike off Marketplace and rode along the river before work. I learned the names of 3 baristas and the correct way to ask for the muffin that doesn't taste like a candle. I went to a free legal clinic and asked a volunteer attorney to glance over my letter. She nodded and said, It's tight. You did good. I saved the words in my pocket like a pebble. Meanwhile, my phone filled with numbers. 62, 74, 91, blocks of missed calls that looked like spam. On day 17, Harper texted from a new number. You really canceled the phone plan? My work email won't sync. I didn't answer. 2 minutes later, it's $146. I'll pay you back Friday. The muscle memory to send money twitched. I let it pass. Friday came and went. So did my need to be useful? At work, my boss, Adrian, a woman who could fix a broken schedule with a pen and a sigh, taught me how to negotiate detention fees without yelling. She said, never apologize for a boundary. Just repeat it like a street name. I wrote that in my notebook. I used it everywhere. The second envelope I mailed was short. Please remove any saved cards of mine from any online account I did not open. This sentence is a legal request. I mailed copies to the house, to Harper's email, to the landlord listed on the for rent sign. I got one reply. Tenant's request will update records. Tenant, not son. It still pinched. Then the call slowed. Not stopped, but slowed. Mom's messages turned into careful updates, like weather reports. Your father's back is worse. Harper's car needs brakes. Rent went up. Each one had a silent line under it. This would be easier with your money. Each one hit my chest and slid off, because I had a routine, a budget, a spine. I saw my old house twice. Once, biking past, I noticed a young couple carrying in a flat box of IKEA wood. Once, late, a light on in the window of what used to be my room. I felt something complicated and did the only thing that helped. I pedaled. 19 months is a long time if you're waiting for someone to blink. It's short if you're busy. I was busy. I took a certification course the company paid for. I got good at reading chaos. I kept a clean apartment with 2 plants I didn't kill. I started therapy at a community clinic, the kind where you sit on a secondhand couch and a grad student says, that makes sense. And it does. We use simple words like fair, use, boundary, and grief. I said, I feel stupid because I still want them to like me. And she said, you're not stupid. You're human. I wrote that down too. On a Tuesday in month 19, I woke to 34 missed calls stacked, like falling dominoes. By lunch, 187. The last voicemail was just breathing, then Dad saying, call me. No please. No son. Just a tone I recognized from overdue notices. At 3:11 p.m., a number I didn't know lit my phone. It was the property manager. Is this Max? She asked. I'm calling because your parents listed you as emergency contact. There was an issue with rent transfer this month, and we can't reach them. I'm not an emergency contact, I said, steady. Please remove my number. Also, they received notice 19 months ago that my name is not connected to the account. She paused. I see that letter attached, actually. Paperwork. Bless it. I hung up, sat with my breathing, and let the urge to fix things crest and break. The urge was loud. It sounded like Mom's crying, like Harper's, "You're being ridiculous," like Dad's, "Be a man." It sounded like the house, like the garage, like the empty hooks. Then it quieted. At 5:40 p.m., I did a small, ordinary thing. I made pasta and called Jordan to ask if he wanted half. Always, he said. Also, your sister just met Luis. She asked if we could talk sense into you. He didn't reply? I asked. He blocked her, Jordan said. He's getting good at boundaries. Tell him I'm proud, I said. Already did, Jordan said. And hey, proud of you too. I smiled into my bowl of food that tasted like normal. Pride is a weird muscle. It aches when you start using it. 2 months after the 187 missed calls, a letter came to my P.O. box with my last name in Mom's handwriting. Inside were 2 lines. We didn't think you meant it.